She goes to a bar to find a guy to kill and then picks up a hot lesbian.
No. I love you, but no. She goes to the bar to meet up with the contact for the Raven Scars, and then he doesn't show up.
Same.
No, not same. Hi guys, and welcome to look at my cat. Just like...
cursing within the first minute of the video. Doing good, Maria.
I'm sorry, you can cut that out. That's your job, your editor. Anyway, hi guys, and welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast, Unresolved Textual Tension. It's me, your host, Maria, and with me today is my ruggedly handsome co-host, William.
Hey guys, extra rugged, extra handsome for you guys today. And the book we're doing today is
The Book Eaters by
Sunyi Dean.
There we go.
Yeah, I looked it up beforehand. I finally remembered. 72 episodes in, and I remembered. And this is one of our mid-month books, so we read it with our patrons. So, you can join our Patreon if you're interested in doing that with us, and we live stream it. And this was a good book to read with them, because this book is awful. And they, in our Discord, just ripped into it. We don't even need to be here.
No.
This video could just be screenshots of them ripping this book apart, set to jaunty music, and and it would be a valid video. They had some really good criticisms, and God, was this book bad.
Yes. And the thing is, there are going to be people who like this book, and there already are. It has a 4 something on Goodreads, and I definitely think of the people who read it for today's video, I am one of the people who I at no point thought it was good, but I think I found it less offensive. It was just it felt like a first book. It felt like an author's first foray, and I found it like so much potential just wasted, a cool concept wasted. But I didn't have, you guys know, sometimes I get angry while I read. I have that innate, which is currently happening with The Massening Part 2. I hate it so much. But this, I kind of read. I just read it. At no point was I like, ooh, so good, so great.
I, by contrast, was infuriated. This is the thing. I'm sometimes infuriated by mediocre things. Not the worst thing, but the mediocre one, especially if other people like it, which isn't the case in this case. But and this book is so utterly mediocre and just makes some basic structural mistakes that I don't understand. Its world building is such an utter waste of a cool idea.
Shallow at best.
Even the most basic world building things this author did not care about. I'm getting angry again thinking about it. It's infuriating how mediocre this book is. I've talked before about how we need to jail authors who waste our time, because they just write this toxic thing that they then throw out into the universe and waste people's time. And that is how I kind of feel about this book. It is not as bad as Million to One, where I formulated this theory that showed me the light. But it's infuriating that this got published. And the funny thing is, I don't even necessarily know if the author thinks it's that good. I was looking at her Goodreads. She has a little thing on it saying oh, this isn't a perfect book, but I'm really proud I get to put it out. And I'm like, are you though? Are you?
Did you listen to the interview with the audiobook narrator and the author at the end?
Because the thing is, when I know more about the author, I tend to go easier on books, and I don't want to be swayed in this case by my dumb animal instincts that humans have. No, this needs to be dispassionate destruction. Imagine a robot destroying the human race out of dispassionate numbers in binary code, and that's me with this book.
Perfect. That is where we should be. I would just like to highlight some very funny comments. Judo Shrew, I want to congratulate Will and Maria for remembering the author's name. We don't get to drink for that. It is rare. Miss Allie Snow says, I didn't hate this book like I hated, say, Poppy War, but I also didn't finish it. Probably if I had made myself finish it, I would have felt hate by the end.
Yes, that's very true.
Judo Shrew says, we are the mob. Miss Allie Snow says, Handmaid's Tale fanfic. Yeah, kind of. Angry Otter says, I was enraged, to which Max said, it's in your name. Angry Otter. And then Miss Allie Snows brilliant. We need a real-time widget that displays Will's blood pressure.
Guys, here's the thing. Let me just let you guys know. I have remarkably high blood pressure for my age. I'm in the hypertension group. So if this book kills me, that's right. That's the fault of this book. If I die, I need you guys to put a copy of this on my grave and burn it. That's what I expect from all of you.
Good job.
Um, yeah.
Lindbergh says this book frustrated me so much it wasn't even fun to be mad at. It's several stories crammed into one book, and none of the stories came to fruition. Penny says, I like this book much less now after revisiting it. Penny says, I didn't realize that I forgot like everything, and then I was shocked when I realized I didn't actually like it.
You know, the other thing, this book, and they mentioned it above, this book becomes way worse in the second half. The second half has a severe structural issue that reminds me of the book me and Katie read, Not Good for Maidens, which was another book that just infuriated me with its existence. And I think the author should have to go to jail. And that's where there are, for some reason, an A and B plot, and the A plot is in the present, and the B plot is in the past. But we already know everything that happens in the B plot in the past, and yet it's also more than half the book. Like, half this book is stuff leading up to the events at the beginning that we already know about. There's no twist, there's no added value. It's just like this book would be better if it was just told sequentially, and I don't know why it isn't.
The one twist that would have been actually something to build up to would be that, what's his face, Kai killed his father. But it's not. We learned that earlier on in the present plot. You're exactly right. There is,
Mm-hmm.
and I found the stuff in the past when she was a child for me was more engaging than a
No, no,
lot
no,
of the
no.
present.
Like 3 chapters of her in the past is fine. That gives you what she was like and some of the world building. And that's fine. That's good. It's more of the when it continues, because a lot of books do that. They'll have a little bit in the character's childhood or something like that. It's when it continues, and it continues till the end of the book. Like, and it's like the pace is sort of beginning to pick up, but like nothing nothing new is revealed in the end, and yet we keep flashing back to it, and like one of the characters being bitchy for no reason.
Yeah. Listen, Allie, I also am usually a stand for a non-linear plot. You're right though. This was just a mess, and I think it's because what Will is saying, we are gaining, besides the couple of chapters in her like childhood that work to really just set up what the world was like, what she was like as a child versus an adult, they begin to lose their necessity. You could have told it all in like her just thinking about it and reliving it. It's just so God, like this book just doesn't explore the really fun ideas it sets up, and it sucks because this author came into it being like she read a tweet. So here's the origin story, guys.
Oh, okay,
There was a
wonderful.
tweet where
By the way,
somebody
this is
said
not a Spider-Man origin story. This is like a Doc Ock. I don't read comics, so I don't know, but this is a villain origin story that Maria is telling you, so just bear that in mind.
the author saw a tweet where somebody was like, we need to stop doing vampire stories. They're not new. Nobody's doing anything new with them. They're done. And the author went, I think I can tell a new story with the vampire inspiration.
She could not. Cut to whatever that meme is. this
Here we are.
this book I described to someone, and I am old, so not all of you will necessarily get this reference. It is The Handmaid's Tale, an AU in Underworld, the movie about vampires, because that is exactly what this book is, except without the actress in that made the whole thing worth it. But in latex. But this book, why don't you tell us about the premise really quick, Maria?
So the premise of this book is, like I said, inspired by vampires, but instead of drinking human blood, that we have the Society of the Book Eaters. And the Book Eaters, you'll never guess this, guys, eat books. They nom nom nom. They have normal people teeth, and then they got book teeth, which I imagined every time is like these like stabby, like those fish that have the little dangly light,
Yeah.
and they've got those big spiky teeth that come out like this. That's what I imagined the book teeth looking like, and they were just comping books. But anyway, The book eaters are a secret society living amongst Norman humans, but
Mm.
separated into manors in the countrysides of Europe. We never hear anything about American book eaters. We do hear about like Japanese book eaters.
Also, it's impossible then for them apparently to create visas because they don't have like social security numbers or whatever, and it's impossible to forge these documents. Despite the fact that at one point they're dealing with a bunch of illegal immigrants for which creating fake like ID would be important. Like it's such a weird thing that they are like, oh, we weren't born with a whatever the English version of a social security card is. We can't have driver's license. We can't cross borders. Bizarre.
And it's also just like you can get documents. Like the one guy was like an inspector, like a property like
Yeah.
Killick. Like what the fuck do you mean you can't get passports? Forge them or just go in and be like, "This is my baby." Like you all should have documentation. You should just like I never understood that part. It makes no sense. Like
It's
how do
bizarre.
listen in what's its face in what's the Titanic one you just mentioned, A Million to One, they literally had a girl who did portraits and landscapes
Yes.
forged documents. You're telling me these sons of bitches couldn't find like a document forger somewhere?
And the thing is, going back to the premise a little bit, because I realized I cut Maria off there. I know, I apologize for my maleness. Oh, that's another thing. This is one of those books that hates
Hates
maleness.
men.
Like,
Hates men.
So much. Like, the
Especially if
characters.
you were a man who likes to have sex.
It's not menness is bad. There can be a few good men if you're a child or asexual or Indian, but you cannot be a good man if you enjoy sexing ladies. And you are automatically bad. And it's so frustrating how unnuanced the book is and how it deals with patriarchy. And this book is obsessed with patriarchy because at this point you may be thinking, oh, people that can eat books, and when they eat the book they automatically gain all the book's knowledge. That's fascinating. Maybe when the main character eats a book the prose change a little bit to match that book. Maybe there's a whole thing where like they can take in all the knowledge of a book but they don't understand the
Stand
book.
it.
Also fascinating. Maria, my lovely, lovely co-host, is that what we got?
No, it is not even remotely. For something called book eaters, and we're ingesting books like you get. They just did nothing with it. And there's even like the book tries to imply that they feed certain people different kinds of books so that they have
Yes.
a different type of mind, and like to control them. So, for instance, the womans
Mm.
who are baby makers need to eat fairy tales to keep them young and docile and rescuable and moldable. Uh, but you don't really feel that.
She doesn't process the main character who was brought up this way does not process the world as a storybook. There's a little bit done with it in terms of she thinks of herself a little bit like a princess, but not enough for someone who eats a book. Again, this story should be about metatextual stuff all the time. Like
Yep.
at the very minimum, it should be literally like she processes. Because it's also mentioned that the book eaters can't write and they're not creative, a thing they keep saying, but isn't actually shown out through the novel because the main character is perfectly creative. That would also have been an interesting character thing that the author can't do because she's a hack. But anyway, and like, so it would have been interesting if she can only process the world through what she
She's
eats.
right.
And in the past, she has an extremely fairy book thing about how she sees the world, and it isn't very much. It's like very quickly the author's like, oh, and then she snuck out to read other books. I think so. She
Yeah.
didn't actually have to write that.
And the thing is, there's a moment where she says that book eaters don't read, but she chose to read like Jane Eyre. And there should be something fundamentally different about actually reading the book versus eating it. Like, for instance, you know how you were saying if you eat the book, you just get the information, versus if you read the book, it can help you understand the information.
Mhm.
That's not done. No difference. She just gets a, like, she just, I don't, because, like, and the thing is, when they eat the books, like, they don't fully get like, it was really weird because sometimes she ate the book, but then she said when she was reading it, it was different, in which case you need to let me know how, sis. But also, then other times she ate like a train list and she got all the times and she could memorize them. So like, because other times it's like when she eats the books, it's more just the vibes, the feelings, and she gets some basic idea of it. And then other times she can pull up exact train times because she the
Hmm.
train manual. And so it's just the mechanics of it are perfunctory at best, stealing a word from my boy Will,
What
but
up?
also just shallow. And it's interesting because, like, Angry Otter brings up a really good point. They can drink alcohol because plot device.
At the
No,
very least, and the author has the main character drink alcohol as a shorthand for she's she's going through a tough time. She needs to deaden herself.
and
Never mind,
also
there's not
she's
an actual.
independent, and
Yeah.
she's
Ugh. Never mind that, like, the dealing with alcohol, she doesn't go withdrawals when she stops, nothing like that. There's not actually a real, it's literally just like a gumshoe plot. But anyway, at a minimum, and it would have been clunky, but it would have been at least a minimum, she should be eating books that make her feel good instead of drinking. Like, at a minimum, that should have been the interaction, but the author won't even do that. It genuinely feels. Somebody in our Discord said you could take out the book eating part and just make these eccentric weirdos, and
yeah, it could
that's
be
it.
a
Nothing
cult.
changes.
It could just be a cult. That's the crazy part. It could literally just be a fucking cult. The book eating does not interact with the plot in any meaningful way. Anyway, back to the premise because I didn't even finish getting through it. So many feels. So, uh, the book eaters, they eat the heckin' books. They live isolated from society because, God forbid, humans found out that they eat books. But there is a second type of book eater, except, shocker, they don't eat books. These are the mind eaters, aka the dragons. They eat minds. They can get an entire person's life, personality, thoughts, feelings, their entire little soul, and they eat it out of your ear with their long tongue.
Which was
And
cool. But
yeah,
the other thing about this is it's like, okay, so we have a twist on vampires. They eat books, and then that twist is then there's just an actual vampire. Like, it's a
yeah.
weird thing where, like, even reading the premise, I was like, how is that interesting though? Like, it's you're taking the weird bit of their society is now less weird. Like, it's really weird that she decided to make that decision, and it also does not. It has nothing to do with the book eaters,
Frankly,
really.
I think you should have just gotten rid of the book eaters entirely and just had a society of mind eaters because that's actually threatening to humans. The book eaters themselves, like, oh god, put them in on their own bubble. Nobody gives a shit. You don't need anyone. You literally don't need food or like basic resources, like leave them alone, but mind eaters, that's something to fuck with. And like, it's there's no way, like, how with vampires sometimes in vampire novels they're like, oh, I just drink blood, like, I don't fully drain the people
Right,
so that they
yes.
don't die, I just do it, or I can drink like blood from blood banks. Mind eaters don't have that option. It's brains until like 50 years ago, where this one family started making this thing called redemption. A bit on the nose.
That was the worst part. I hated how it was called that.
I know! Especially because she's like, he needed. Because you see, there's a scene where the main character feeds a priest, a vicar, to her son, and then she's like, he needed redemption. And I was like, oh, we're redeeming. And then, no, it's a drug called redemption.
Oh God. Also, okay, Miss Ali Snow says the author came up with the idea of book eaters and thought it was super cool, and then immediately got distracted by patriarchy bad.
Patriarchy bad.
That is the next thing of the premise, and is maybe one of the most annoying things, which is you come up with this idea for book eaters. Again, fascinating, lots of stuff you could do with that, metatextually, in the prose, world building wise, and then was just like, but you know what? Really want to write about? Patriarchy. So we'll make this secret society super patriarchal. Women have really low fertility, so they're treated as broodmares. Never mind that in a situation where there was low fertility, what would happen is the women would rise to top in a matriarchy because they have access to children. This is a distinct choice the author made to go with a super patriarchal society. And element of the book. It just doesn't need to be there. It really doesn't.
And here's the other piece of the setup, the premise that is just the worst because it never ever interacts with the actual plot. But you might be thinking, and frankly, I don't think anybody was thinking this. I think you go into a book and you're just willing to take it. But the author was like, where did the book eaters come from?
Mm.
Where did the mind eaters come from? Why do they exist? There was a collector. And the collector was an alien from outer space who put the book eaters and the mind eaters on the planet to collect information for the aliens.
Insanely frustrating.
And just never came back for them.
And the thing is, you go into a book like this again, not needing an explanation for the one weird element. And like, it's not even something like where they're like, we don't know. Some people think it was an alien. Some people think we've always been like, it wasn't one of those kind of things. It was literally just like, oh, there's a collector, but we just don't really think about it that much.
Collector, behold us. Like it's just like their god. I hated it. Why are you going to add this sci-fi element that really does not need to be here? Anyway, I want to highlight some
Yeah.
comments.
Some
Lindbergh, book eating, completely irrelevant. Absolutely. Judo Shrew, aka Serious Shenanigans. Unresolved textual tension, wisdom, more cannibalism, more better. Yes.
That's happened
Yeah.
if you read our Nettle on Bone review or watch.
Yeah. Lindbergh, them being aliens, completely irrelevant. And then Judah, you guys, you need to know that the patriarchy is from outer space. Space sexism.
So
Lindbergh,
weird.
nowhere is safe from evil patriarchy, not even outer space.
It pissed me off that birth trauma used for. Yeah, we're going to talk about how this book actually treats motherhood in an extremely shallow way. It's so shallow, and I'm actually going to talk about 3 horror movies that I think do this better. And we'll get to those as we go. But it's oh god, even the okay. So basically, going back to the main premise a little bit to explain what we're talking about. The main character is I'm talking like Maria for some reason. The main character is called Devin. And she is on the run with her son, who is a mind eater. And she has to bring people back every 30 days to let him feed. So she's
now every
murdering.
2 weeks. He's getting older.
Oh yeah, every 2 weeks. And when he eats these people, he picks up a little bit of their brain. And before he does it, each time she asks them, "Are you a good person?" Now, you would think, okay, such a juicy situation. Like the drama. How does she handle doing this horrible thing for her children, for her child? Motherhood. What lengths are you willing to go to? Let's deal with. It's not even a great situation. You're just murdering people. Within 3 chapters, we just don't engage with that ever again. We don't engage with the trauma it would have cost her to keep murdering people as a serial killer. We don't engage with the process of her doing that. We don't engage with what it does to her son to feel like that. It's literally just like, it's like the book eating. I thought up a situation and then got more interested in something else, so I went and did that.
The book vaguely touches on, but it's not as much, the fact that like every time Kai the son eats someone, he like at one point he's speaking Polish, just Polish, because he can't remember English until he eats the next person who spoke English. And there's a point where he's like, I am 25 adults. I can curse if I want to. And that should be explored so much more. There's one character who actually has where he's one person before he feeds and then becomes a different person after he feeds. And it's a side evil character. And like, no, we should be exploring that through Kai.
You know, it's interesting. Are you saying that it could be a metaphor for growing for raising a child, and that you have to choose what things you give them so that they end up with a balanced diet and balanced personality? And maybe over time she realizes, oh, I am losing my child. He is no longer mine. A thing that all parents have to go through and deal with their children separating from who they wanted them to be. Maria, is that what we get in this novel?
No, we don't even get the opposite. Because the other way you could go is, regardless of what you give a child, regardless of how you raise a child, personality is sometimes just in them. They come out with like genetics plays a lot into personality and how they interact with the world. That could have been the opposite direction. Like, you keep trying to feed him the best, you keep trying to giving him nice people, but he's a little shit. Or like the opposite, like he remains kind no matter what is happening. Like, you could have played either way. Your responsibility as a parent to give your child the best, or the fact that children are who they are and you are just a shepherd.
And that's one of the things when you interact with kids is, yes, obviously environment, all of that, but there is like a set personality. My two nephews out of the womb were so different, and like there is, so yeah, there is a certain amount of that, and maybe you can't shape your child. All things parents have to work about. But that would take this book to be smart, and this book isn't. It thinks being smart is criticizing the patriarchy in the most blunt of anvil dropping ways. And that is not smart. This is another book, by the way. This is the second book we've read after She Who Became the Sun, which also was awful. From the one book reviewer I respect, because I really respect her TV and movie takes. She's right all the time. She's really smart. And I'm now realizing that actually, when it comes to books, she just likes ideas about gender and just like big ideas in general. She doesn't actually know how to engage with them, maybe. So we'll try one more from her. But I'm having the trouble that I don't know how to pick good books, and I feel bad for our patrons because they keep having to read shitty books with us, and I keep trying to pick the good books with them. Like we're not making them read The Mastening Part 2 this time with extra rice sand.
Even though a lot of them would love that. Also, remember how I was telling you Katie was enjoying it? I got some text from her. She goes, "Never mind, it's terrible." And she's just giving me quotes from a sex scene, and she's like, "What is this?"
Oh God.
Yeah, we try really hard, and Will tries because he's the one who picks a lot of the books. Every once in a while, I throw in a book like Hyperion. You're welcome.
Hyperion, yes, for 6 episodes, but
Uprooted. You're welcome.
it's true.
Some of the books I've recommended because I knew they were good coming in. You're welcome. But it's really hard when it's a book you've never read before, trying to judge whether it's good or not. Back to this specific book. The other issue, fundamentally, as a book, and this is just to let anyone who might pick it up, is the author explains stuff a lot. Like, things don't unfold and you learn things. It's like in the Hyperion book, I had that issue in the beginning where there's a lot of new words and nothing is explained. You learn as you go. As the plot carries on, you pick up things and you start putting them together. This is not that. You're going to get a lot of things just explained to you. It's going to come up. You're going to get like a couple pages of explanation, and then we'll get back to what is happening in the plot. So it can be that's one of the huge pace killers, honestly, in my opinion. Lindbergh has mentioned that. A lot of people mentioned it in the Discord.
There's one part where she spends a page in the present describing what the dragons are and what they do and how they are. And then there's a flashback after that chapter is done to her as a child talking with her brother about what the dragons, and it's just the same information. And it's weird because it's like an editor should have caught that, and also it's way more organic in the second example than it is in the first. So I don't know why that wasn't caught. Another thing we need to talk about, well, we can talk about it later because we tend to like talk about all our issues with it before we actually get to the plot. Yeah.
The beginning.
And so basically, again, half this book is her with her child in the present, and half this book is her life story up until that point. And it goes on way too long and has no tension. Oh, and the way it starts in the past is with her as a child. She's relatively carefree. She doesn't know that being a book eater vampire is like a weird thing. But the important thing to know, again, in the world is that these secret families, women have very low fertility. So they have to marry twice, and they're essentially just sold off. And they don't get to keep their child or raise their child. They get 3 years and then they're gone.
Which is dumb. It is dumb. You should be trying to keep mothers happy. They should be visiting their children regularly because there's no reason not to. Like, once you have both of your kids, go visit your children. Just bump back and forth between your 3 houses. Like, I don't understand why the mechanic is you get 3 years with your child and then you must be separated and then it's not your child anymore. It's just this house is.
It's a distinct choice the author makes, and that's okay to a certain extent. Actually, no, it isn't, because the problem is that when you do that, when you make certain distinct choices that go away from the reality of the world, it makes it more and more of an artifice if it's more and more forced. So, for example, or even do like a medieval thing. The 2 children are just raised together and then go back to their houses. Like, that could also be a way of handling this. It's really weird that she immediately went, let's go broodmares. And I'm not even going to like do anything interesting with the concept. It's just broodmares. And that's actually another problem, is that the only character growth that happens is in the past timeline. It's not in the present. I genuinely don't know why she actually included the present, because that's not the story she was interested in telling. And I don't know, but to me, it felt like that was like about 30% of the story in terms of time. And also, there's also a problem where the present storyline, like, there's no actual tension because we all know how it's going to work out, essentially. Like, it's very simplistic how it turns out. Max says, could they eat Braille books and understand the contents? That's actually a good question because
Really good
later
question.
they can use Braille, they can use
Morse code.
Morse code, but only if it's tapping, not if it's written down or something
Oh,
like
that's
that.
the other thing. Book eaters can't write at all. If they try write, their hands go numb. They get headaches. Like they cannot. They feed off of other people's creativity, and so you can't eat. It's almost like a form of cannibalism. It talks about, it's not really, but like you can't write what you need to eat.
That would have been an interesting thing to explore if like there was a weird closed loop of if you wrote a thing and then ate it, it would make you like dumber or less able
Or
to think of.
insane.
Yeah, like that would have been interesting. But no, the author is just it genuinely feels like somebody was just like she wrote a vampire novel and then somebody was like, okay, but what about make it book eating? And she was like, oh, okay, I can just put that in. Like literally just copy paste vampire to book eaters.
Book eaters could live amongst normal people. Like there's no reason. Like vampires hard. You can't be out during daylight. You got an issue with garlic. And
You
you
got to
literally
eat people.
you need to eat people, which means body counts to worry about. Book eaters, they go to the store, they can just buy a book. People will be like, "Wow, you read so much." Yeah, I read like a book a week. Whatever the case is, go back to your apartment, eat a book.
How, though, would we do uber patriarchy, Maria? I don't understand if you were to follow the logic of the world she created. And that's the thing about why you will never be a great writer, is that you
Oh
don't
no.
understand that you must write about how patriarchy is bad. By the way, I haven't read The Handmaid's Tale, but it's an example, I think, of how you can write about an uber patriarchy in a way that says something. Whereas in this book, it really doesn't say a lot besides men be bad.
The thing about Handmaid's Tale is it's our society sliding down into that.
Yes.
Like because of an issue of infertility, what happens to society? Which is fascinating because this society is like, no, this is how they've always been. Book eaters always have had, like, the knights have always existed. So there's this group of book eaters called the knights who arrange all the marriages. So like, because you have like 6 families, right? And they each have a patriarch. This was also really dumb. Why not have their like cousins or siblings also have kids? Why is it only the patriarchs? You are literally limiting your genetic pool.
Okay. And then there's also all these aunts, but it's never explained how many of them there are.
No.
And for some reason, they don't raise the girls to understand what's going to happen. Like, it's a really weird. The again, the world building does not match the plot she wants to tell.
For a book about motherhood that is centered on a woman's experience, there are no relationships between women in except for one that is a romantic one at the end. This is a book about motherhood. There are other women around. There should be, like, the fact that her only close relationships as a child was with her uncle father. He's called Uncle Ike, but he's actually her papa, and her brother Ramsey makes no sense. Why is she not interacting? Why does she not have other like experiences? There's one conversation she has with another woman when she gets married for the first time, but like there's no female relationships. Like she has no fondness for her aunt, and it's sold as like, oh, the aunts are jealous of the freedom that the young girls get that they no longer have, and they're better about it. But like, why? Like, why would that not make them sympathetic and want to warn and engage? And like, you can also use that as a way to like condition them from, if you let the little girls run around and be free and play with their brothers all the time, which is exactly what happens in this world. Yeah, they're gonna be like pissed when you suddenly start making them do things they don't want to do. And it's just so weird. Like, why don't we have. So, Judoshu has a great comment. That is always one of the funniest things about these books. They want to engage with feminist and anti patriarchal themes, but they often seem to miss out on the positivity of female relationships. Iron Widow, the exact same thing. Poppy War, similar. She who became that one I'm gonna not put in here because I
That's such
again,
a
I think
clustercluck. That has elements of it in that the main characters has vagina walkie-talkies and not actually legitimate interactions with women until she's like 40. But anyway, go ahead.
and it's just like, why are we not having these books where women are having, like, there should be more conversations between women. It's like, I feel like the new age of the, like, Bechdel test needs to be like, is there conversations not about men with more than one woman? Because, like,
Oh, okay, all right. This is actually a really good point that I was about to talk about. Lindbergh says the love interest is a woman, but the romance is literally because the author says so. Okay, so the female character that she falls in love with and is her okay, so basically, just to explain this very quickly, she goes to pick up somebody at a bar but can't, and then the woman that she comes back to replace with, she's gonna have her son kill, but her son doesn't kill her because she was from this place that we'll talk about in a second. But anyway, that character is called Hester, I think. Hester.
Hester.
And she is the female love interest, right? And the thing is, she and her relationship with Devin, she is actually sort of ungendered in how she is handled in that family, in the family that she comes from. She has none of the woman issues that Devin has. And so their relationship doesn't really engage with that at all. It's not even a case where like she is used to not having the pressures of womanhood and how that would intersect with Devin's experience of it. She just literally never has to think about being a woman, and it was never treated like, because she's like infertile, I think. And so in her house, just nobody cared. But like
Oh
that's what
no,
I'm
it's
saying.
because she's a mind eater. You don't breed with mind eaters. Angry Otter points out the asexual man represents the man who can be taught to be good. The MC literally talks at him about how he's privileged and she's oppressed, and also has to explain love to him and why she's not going to abandon her children. Like, which is wild. Oh, so Lindbergh says, actually, I argue the journalist was the only good man in the story. I agree, but he was also an impressed man because he was human. So again, it's not just like a man within the system. That is, he was outside of
Mhm.
the shitty men. He was a human, which is fundamentally different. We got to have different types of motherhood, guys. We cannot just sell this all encompassing. You get there's literally a point where Devin is like, and then there was purpose to my life as I held the baby, and I'm like, oh no. Like, and again, that's fine if we were presented other versions of motherhood. Like, if we were introduced to other mothers who were like, this one was like, I immediately had the baby and went, get it away from me, I don't want it, which happens. Postpartum depression has happened. Some people just, they end up having kids and they're like, they spend the next 18 years going, I'm gonna do my best for this, but God, I wish I didn't have it.
This is where I'm going to bring up my first horror movie. There was a movie that came out recently called Baby Ruby, if you're wondering, that had Jon Snow in it. He's not a good actor, but anyway, it's about postpartum depression and like how much she kind of feels trapped and hates her kid because it won't shut the fuck up. That is such a real thing that people deal with, or women deal with, vagina havers deal, well, anyway, they deal with, and like that is something that is interesting and speaks to the reality of the situation of having a child more so than you just feel. And look, hormones exist, they do. You see a thing and you immediately want to it's yours in your head. Your body is tricking you into thinking that you like it because otherwise you would murder the stupid thing. Like that does happen, but it can become so much more complicated than that. And this book doesn't want. So one of the big problems is that Devin and her son don't feel like mother and son. They don't really have a relationship at all. Well, they do a little bit, but like there's not a lot of focus on it. The son is like this weird mix of 25 people and a child, but like it's not done well. She just keeps telling us it's a weird mix. And so for a book about motherhood, but that's the thing, this isn't a book about motherhood. It needs to be about motherhood, and it feels that it's lacking, but it's not. It's underworld with the Handmaid's Tale backstory.
It really is. I guess we should get into the
You're
plot.
you're muted, which I mean is how all women should be. But
Wait, I'm not muted. Guys, can you hear me?
can you guys hear her, or is it just me?
I think it's just Will. Everyone says I can hear
I mean,
her.
to be
I
fair,
hear
we can just
Maria.
monologue one person and then the next.
They all can hear me. You can't hear me.
There we go. We're back.
Okay, perfect.
I mean, again, that was maybe the 10 best seconds of my relationship with Maria. But go ahead.
I happen to know for a fact that that's not true, so we're just gonna move move past that. I think we should, because we're an hour and 8 minutes in, Will. I
We
think we
always
need
do
to
this.
start
I
the
think
plot.
there's something about the Patreon live streams that make it so that we front load all of our thematic and issues, and then we just don't talk about the plot. So, plot. She's on the run. She's looking for redemption, which is this drug that makes it so the mind eaters don't actually eat minds, but it was only made by this one family called the Shadow
The
somethings.
Raven's cars.
Oh, the Raven Scars. And the
The
Raven Cars.
shadows.
Something's the Raven Cars, but the Raven Cars had a civil war and are now missing, but there might still be some alive. So she's having to murder people to feed her son as she's searching for it. And also, she murdered her last husband, and so they're also on the run from the Knights, who are like the enforcement arm of the houses. She goes to a bar to find a guy to kill, and then picks up a hot
No, no,
lesbian.
no, 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 no. I love you, but no. She goes to the bar to meet up with the contact for the Raven Scars, and then he doesn't show up.
Same.
No, not same. And there's a couple of things that happen that I think are important. You get to see her feed the vicar. There's this vicar character to her son. And what you get is she detaches a lot from when her son feeds. Like, she also has to lock him in a bedroom so he doesn't eat her. Which is not as terrifying as it should be. There should be more terror with her relationship with her son. Because at first, I didn't realize he was 5.
Oh, another horror movie. This one I can't remember the name of, which is basically like The Grudge Part 2, but what if she had kept Damien and had to raise him, where her son is turning into a demon and she has to feed him actual people, and he looks like a monster when he's going up to this biker that she's brought back, and his skin is ripping, and it's like, what do you do with the child who you love but is fundamentally turning into something that you can't, that's a monster? That should have been this book, but it's not.
One of the things you learn is that he used to call her mama, but then once he started eating people, like the first time he fed on an actual person, he stopped calling her mom. He started calling her Devon. Part of this is he eats his father. And so in his father's head, she was Devon. But anyway, so she does that. While this is happening, we get flashbacks to when she was young. Her family home was the Fairweathers. They lived up in like the marshy moors of northern Britain, northern England, and they like old books. They have no new books. Very old, kind of dilapidated. They're poor, but still wealthy. She has an idyllic childhood. They call her a princess. She's lots of fairy tales, but she's got gumption. She sneaks around and she goes into the forbidden library sections and she eats things like Jane Eyre and like other things she's not supposed to. And these two plots are told simultaneously. I'll go through her past plot and then we'll go to the present plot because I think that's the most cohesive way to say that.
The way the book actually itself should have been structured.
Young Devon, the first significant thing that happens is one day she's playing in the woods and she finds a human, because they are not human. They are alien things. Also, when they die, they turn into paper. I don't like that metaphysically.
I think because in Blade, the vampires turn into ash. She was like, "Oh, but paper vampires."
So yeah, and they originally are paper, like sheafs of paper, and then they just turn into like dust. So yeah, paper vampires. Yeah, we're doing so good. Anyway, and they're stronger than humans. They don't feel change, like they feel changes in temperature, but like they don't need a sweater, they don't need a coat. And so she's like tromping around in the snow as a young girl in a linen dress, and then she finds a human reporter, this guy named Manny, and he's like, "Hi, I'm trying to investigate your family." And she's like, "Great, I'll take you back to my Uncle Ike, who's actually my papa." And she's like, takes him, and they're like, "Oh no, it's a human who is trying to discover us. Get off of our property." And then she's like, "Bye, human guy." And then you find out Manny is sent to the Raven Scars to be dealt with. And you're like, "Oh no, Manny is dead." Manny's not dead. He'll come back. Second most important thing that happens to her during this period, one day, there was a wedding happening where this lady, and what you learn is that the Knights arrange marriages so that there's less inbreeding, because there's only 6 families with like 6 patriarchs who have children. God forbid they choose one of their cousins so there's more genetic diversity, but no, why would you do that? 6 patriarchs, and all the women that are born, they have fertility up until the age of like mid 20s. Like they don't stay fertile for long, so they have to arrange the marriages to get as many kids out of these girls within the time period they have, and generally it's two, and then after two some women can have a third, but it's very rare. And so there's a big wedding. A woman from this other family is coming to her house for a thing while everyone's distracted. Devin and her brother Ramsey, well, Devin's like, I want to go see one of the dragons. What are dragons, you're asking? They're mind eaters that the knights use to like as
Attack hounds,
police.
essentially.
Yeah,
They
attack
have
hounds.
like
They're literally.
they're brainwashed into being able to follow orders and just yeah, that kind of a thing.
And so again, the dragons are just mind eaters. They're book eaters, but they eat minds. They control the dragons by giving them the redemption drug we talked about, which makes them. It doesn't take away their ability to eat people, but it makes it so that they can eat books and they aren't hungry, but they have to chew them because they don't have book teeth. Anyway, so Ramsey and her, or she's like, I want to go see one of the dragons. They keep the dragons in this one library, and Ramsey's like, we shouldn't do that. That's dangerous. And she's like, I don't care, Ramsey. I'm gonna do it. What books has she, what adventure novels has she been reading that inspires this? Like, if you're going to go with the, we feed you these kinds of books to make you behave a certain kind of way, then I need to see the books that, like, are we reading Indiana Jones? Not Indiana Jones, but like, what is that book about the boys who solve the mysteries?
The Hardy Boys.
The Hardy Boys. Like, is she eating Hardy Boys books? Because at this point, the spiciest thing we've seen her eat is Jane Eyre. And like Jane Eyre's got a lot of things, but she ain't let me go investigate the secret library where they're keeping mind-eating dragons.
And the book
Like,
eaters are explicitly said to be very uncreative, which again I thought was going to be interesting in terms of this society of people that can only that have knowledge of our society but cannot innovate their own. Like that's very interesting, an inherently parasitical one that maybe has different needs than ours but can only ever think of things through our eyes and can never form their own true society. But no, that's not done here. It's just they keep saying it and then she has no problems at all being creative.
so Lindbergh made the comment. She said in the bar that she reads crime novels, but she does now. Like that's her modern, like in the present timeline, she does. As a child, we never hear about her reading crime novels. And again, the spiciest thing we see her read is Jane Eyre. They go to find the dragons. They get caught. Oh no! Some knights catch them, and the knights are like, "Fuck you, Ramsey. You're a rebel. You're going to have to become a knight." And then Devin's like, "But it was my idea. What happens to me?" And they're like, "Oh no, you're a woman. We need you to make babies, so nothing is going to happen to you. You get away with murder. Your brother is going to get put into a cult like Brotherhood of Men who get off by subjugating other people. It's fine. Don't worry about it." And so then her brother Ramsey gets taken into the Knights. Next significant thing, she gets married. I think she's like 16 or 17. She's quite young. She gets married into this one family. I forgot what their name is, but on her wedding day, there's alcohol for the first time and she drinks, and apparently despite food making them sick, alcohol is fine, and tastes
Such
like
a weird.
it is. She gets kind of drunk. This family is super big into celebrations and stuff. They also have like these origami pages of books that kind of act like drugs. I don't know what has been done to them, but it makes you really like hyped.
I thought they were basically like cocaine dusted, which like would be kind of clever, but that's the only clever thing done with book eating throughout the entire book. And
Yeah,
again, drugs shouldn't work on them. Like that's the whole metaphor.
and what it's almost sold as is that the text in it is so powerful. Like it's just tiny pieces of books, or it's almost like certain paragraphs are so powerful or impactful they will make you high, which again, fascinating. What kinds of text are we talking? Like emotionality? Are we talking spicy sex scenes? What is doing this? Anyway, while she's there, she meets one of the wives who had come and married into her family and who had a kid, and they have this kind of conversation about where she's talking to the woman, she's asking her questions, and the woman's being cagey, and you can tell, like, oh no, motherhood will not be great for you. Oh no. She meets Killick, they do the do. She's very high and drugged up for it, which, great. She doesn't dislike the experience, but she doesn't like the experience. Again, the origami paper things helped. She has her first baby. This is a little girl. And immediately at the birth of the child, she is like, this is the greatest thing ever. My life was struck with meaning and purpose and love. And I don't like this. for all the reasons I said before, but also because the entire book she keeps saying love is a choice. But then it's like this inescapable thing where love is also terrible and will make you do terrible things. And it's like, well, then those choices are a terrible, those terrible things are
Mhm.
choices. You can't just be like, it is because of love.
We talked a lot in She Who, whatever, She the Bliss Son, about essentialism and gender essentialism. And this sort of felt like that, but it also just felt lazy. Like she was like, but she's going to love her kid. And there's no understanding of like, it would have made a lot more sense if this first child she had grown to love over 3 years and hadn't originally as much. And then that shows why in her second child, she was.
100%. That's exactly what I was gonna say. There is no. It's not like our society where we are told from a young age that, like, think of all the movies you see. Motherhood is paramount. You're told your entire life, oh, you to become a mother, to have children. Like the women amongst us who go, nah, I don't think I want kids, are the ones that are looked at as weird. Like you'll change your mind, or you just haven't met the right guy. Like our society, like brainwashes us into thinking like motherhood is it. That's your goal, motherfucker. Just get there. She has not grown up with that. She has not grown up where motherhood is going to be this thing that completes you. Nobody has ever told her that. None of the books she has ever read. I mean, she's been reading fairy tales. Do you know what fairy tales all have, or eating fairy tales? Do you know what they all have in common? There's no moms. The
That's
mothers are almost
actually.
always dead.
Oh, that's such a good point. If this actually,
Yes.
again, this book needs to be way more metatextual in terms of how it deals with, because like they're called knights, they're called dragons, and she thinks of herself as a princess, and those are the only fairy tale aspects to this book. It's so half-assed. You're right.
If she'd been reading books that had really strong motherhood like values and about how like babies are going to complete you and give you a little something extra, but it's not even framed that way. Like she came into it expecting that. It's like she holds the baby and like ah, which granted could happen, but I think if this book wants to do what it wants to do better, she should have come out like kind of like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, what am I? Nothing in my life has prepared me for this. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. And then slowly, after like a year, fall in love. Like there should be a moment where like little Salem looks up at her and smiles, and she's like, "Oh my god, I love this creature, and I would die for it because I've gotten to know it. I have bonded." Because then it becomes about the bond you build with individual people, and which is frankly more important than like it came out of me, like, or it's half my genetics. I mean, for me anyway. And then it would have made her loving Kai to begin with make more sense, or at least valuing motherhood. But for other people, they cannot have that. But no, none of that is what happens.
This is where we need to talk about something that it's funny because in writing classes, they're always like, a very simple thing. And I'm always like, this is so trite. Like, oh, you got to come up with a character arc. It's character development. And you should plot that out. And what I'm realizing is that authors need to write this down in a thesis statement before they start their book because so many books forget to do actual growth. The character is the same from the beginning to the end because the author only has one version of the character they like, and that character will stay the same. So, this book, there is no character growth. Again, she loves her child from the minute it's born, and she basically does a little bit of. The book tries to say she's growing in the past in terms of learning to fight, that like she thinks that if she follows the rules she'll be okay, and then she realizes she doesn't. But like when they try to take Salem from her daughter, she like kicks and fights and stuff. Like right from minute one, she's willing to fight this system to keep her child. And she doesn't learn. Again, there would be such a better progression if she didn't love Salem at first and then did, and then when she has to give up Salem, she realizes how painful it is, and then she like is depressed when that starts happening with Kai.
It's insane because she comes out swinging. Like she has this baby immediately, like holding, like starts fighting when they try, because like the midwives, the aunties of this family realize, oh no, she's gotten too attached. We need to take the baby away. And she screams, she kicks, she fights until Killick, her husband, has to come in and be like, why am I listening to screaming? There's a baby screaming. There's a woman screaming. Why is this happening?
I am a
And
man. How dare women feel or be loud,
the
guys?
one lady is like, well, listen, she's getting too attached, and I think it would be easier when we finally have to separate her after 3 years if we separate her from her child now. And the guy, Killick, is like, nah, I want peace now. We'll deal with that when it happens. Just give her the goddamn baby. And so she gets Salem. Fast forward, Salem is older. She loves Salem. She also thinks, like, Killick tells her, "Yeah, you'll get to stay. You know, we'll let you hang around longer, even though it's normally only 3 years." And so on Salem's third birthday, she's like, "Yay, I'm so happy I get to stay around." And then they drug her and take her back to her family, and she literally immediately like jumps out into the like woods and tries to run. They have to call the knights. The knights come with dragons and a bunch of knights and pin her down and take her back. And then Killick has to come back and be like, "Listen, if you are good and you don't fuck around and you don't cause problems, I will tell your daughter about you. I will tell your daughter about you so she remembers you, and I will tell her that on her 10th birthday you can come visit her. And it is up to you. If you are naughty and you don't do a heckin' listen, I will tell your daughter that you don't love her and you didn't want to come visit her on her 10th birthday. If you're good, you'll get to come and you can have that moment." And she's like, "Okay, I just have to do the thing and just get through and do, like, I gotta figure it out." Her second marriage is into this other family whose name I cannot remember. This family is very modern. They have they're wealthy. The outside of their house is very,
Video games. They have
yeah, they
video.
have,
There are more video game references in this book than book references, and that is a crime in a book about book eating. Video game eating would have been a better story. Lindbergh says, "I don't get why they take the babies at all, other than to give this story some kind of plot." Yes. Also, it's weird though, because it could have just been, oh, she had a second child, and the second child could eat people, and they wanted to take it away. There's
that went
no,
away.
and that's enough reason to
Exactly.
be on the run with him. Like, there's no reason to have this whole Handmaid's Tale AU aspect to this.
No, it's so weird because, again, like, if you want the women to make you babies and be docile, give them little pieces of freedom. Let them see their children. Let them interact. If they don't want to, don't make them. Like, in this society, the if you're going to do it, it needs to be so that the women are compliant. So you need to give them things to make them feel comfortable. And then it is when they try to take away her one baby that she looks at the entire system and realizes, "Oh no, this entire system is terrible. We are it's a pantomime of freedom. I don't
Mm-hmm.
actually have it.
And a
They
pantomime
allow
of
this."
privilege would be good, in that, like, the infertile women are viewed as lesser, and she's a mother, so she's great. Or even, I am young, I am great, old women suck, which is like kind of a thing that people deal with. Nobody actually thinks about being old in our society. Like, yeah, so it would have been like a kind of nice dissonance there.
But anyway, no, that's not what happens. So her new husband is a jerk. They also are like human traffickers. Like her new family that she's married into, not great. Oh, Lindbergh has a great comment. Like, what if Devon started to love her first child, then it died from an illness, and now they want to take her second child away from being a monster? Way better motivation. Way, way better. Like, you are sick with grief, and then you have another child, and they want to take it. Like, amazing. And then Judo Shrew makes, if you can control and make people happy easily, then that is powerful. Gotta give people their soma. And like, it's so true.
You can get it off of Steam. You could buy it in a store. I think you can download it from Humble Bundle. There's lots of ways to give people Soma, the video game. I'm sorry, that was such a dumb joke.
It
Um,
was.
Lindbergh's right. It actually makes for a less strong story. Having your child die and then growing attached to the second one
Is a much
works
better.
so much better.
Yep. Or you grow up. She is allowed to see Salem. She sees Salem like a couple times a year. She has to go away, like, and then when they try take away Kai from her, she knows Salem is going to be all right for now, and she chooses to leave Salem to rescue Kai and keep him from going to Dragondom. That is also compelling. Making that
Mm-hmm.
choice is also fantastic. But no, that's not what happens at all. None of that is explored. Anyway, what does happen is her new husband sucks. Sex with him is not great. His younger brother or his cousin, I think Yarrow's his cousin. There's this guy named Yarrow, and like on the night of her wedding, she is not having a good time. And so he's like, "You want to play video games?" She's never heard of video games, and then she sees they play Tomb Raider, and it's Lara Croft, and Lara Croft is basically a princess, but she's an ass kicking princess. Um, Oh, baby, she's an
Oh, let me
aristocrat.
guess. Let me guess. Now we're going to be making the author is going to be making a pointed thematic decision that she is going to explore how books, a passive medium, affect someone versus video games, which are an active medium that you have to play through. That's like an interesting contrast in art forms, in media forms, and maybe that could be a metaphor for her or a means of her character growth. Is that what happens, Maria, my lovely co-host?
No, not even vaguely. Great. So good. She plays video games. Eventually, her husband is like, why do you have my wife? And then the husband makes a dumb comment like, well, in knowing, at least knowing it's you, I know there was no hanky panky business done. So he takes her. And basically, what ends up happening is Yarrow and her develop a friendship. Every day, she kind of escapes into the game room. They play video games. She discovers that the game room was his sister, Victoria's. Victoria is MIA. She was sent to another place because she also didn't handle the rigors of motherhood a la book eaters very well. Yarrow, eventually, once she gets pregnant, and she doesn't have to worry about dealing with her husband anymore, they get even closer. They become friends, and basically at one point Yarrow's like, you can escape, we can escape, look, here's a map of, you've never seen a map before, here's a map of where we live, eat this, it'll give you names. And he's like, we can escape, we can go to Ireland. And she's like, I can't escape, I have Salem, I'm gonna have this heckin' baby. I can't do an escaping. But then she gives birth. The baby is a mind eater, and she's like, "Oh shit!" And the mind eaters for the first 3 years can uh, breastfeed.
Breastfeed.
And once they wean off, that's when they start craving minds. And so she can keep the baby for the first 3 years. Once it no longer is satisfied with breast milk, which their breast milk is ink. They also drink ink tea. Great. Love.
Again, why you went with an alien explanation for their origin is really weird.
She gets to keep him. Everyone kind of like avoids him. Her husband puts like guards on her all the time. And once he once he's weaned off breast milk, then or the breast ink, they're going to hand him over to the knights to become one of the knights dragons. And she's like, no, I don't want in that. That's heckin' no good. So right up to like almost at his third birthday, there's this whole like huge issue, and like he's super isolated. It's not like Salem, where Salem was part of the family and Salem got a really big birthday party or anything like that. None of that happened. But basically around his third birthday, like Papa and two human guys that he had hired to be her guards, and basically like jailers to make sure she doesn't escape, show up, and they're going to kill Kai, the baby, the mind eater, who is 3 years old at this point, because the Ravenscars, which is the family that produces that drug Redemption, 2 months ago, they're gone. Something happened. There was a coup in the family, and the entire house burnt down, and nobody knows where they are or where their drug is and how to get any more of it. So he's like, you know what? Fuck it. We're not going to deal with this. We're just going to kill the kid. Devin goes ballistic, and she tries to protect Kai, and one of the she ends up in a position where the only way to do it is she unsheaths her book teeth and she just shreds the men. And while this is happening, baby Kai this entire time has been like, hungry, mama, I'm hungry, and like she was nuzzling his ear, and like they ran out of Redemption, and she was like, please don't do that, that's kind of weird, I don't like that.
That was the one. That was one of the few times that like the weirdness of Kai came to the front, where you're like, oh, this is a monster. That's creepy that it's both loving her but wanting to eat her at the
Eat her
same
at the same
time.
time. Like it is that like impulsive of like a thing that it would eat her. Anyway, so while she's getting the shit beat out of her, and he is hungry, he like pounces on Papa and just starts eating Dad. Like wrapped around, and the description, this is one of the only times there was a great description, which is he's wrapped around his father's face and nuzzling and suckling against it, like with a milk drunk kitten look to it, and like what's his face is just like at one point like you see like consciousness and then not consciousness, but he's still alive. She shreds the humans. She has her The baby, like, eventually, like, once he stops feeding, goes to sleep. Then Ramsay and a bunch of knights bust in and are like, oh, god damn, fucking this guy. Why did he do this? This is so dumb.
But what you haven't mentioned is that Ramsey has begun to cackle a lot, and he now has a mustache that he goes like this a lot with like, because Ramsey has completely fallen for the knight indoctrination. He is now their biggest advocate. We get his viewpoint 2 or 3 times throughout the book, and he's just no feelings for Devon at all. Awful person, believes in all. Like, I don't understand how she could treat this character so broadly in terms of him being a villain. Like, just why would you not try to keep some of that childhood closeness but not being opposed, having a certain amount of conflict in him and Devon of how much they trust each other, like, and want the same things versus don't. No, that would I don't think you would understand how patriarchy works if one of the men in the book was conflicted
and actually fond of his sister.
Everyone knows that, men in patriarchy hate their sisters. Obviously, there's no kind of thing where like they love their sisters, but maybe they don't view them as full human, or there are ingrained traits that are ingrained mannerisms and things that, they are used to. Like, no, obviously they chuckle and they curl their mustaches.
It would have been great if he had purposefully like tried to manipulate things to benefit Devon, but that's not what happens. He uses Devon to benefit himself and the other knights. Anyway, basically he comes in and he's like, listen, the Raven's cars are missing. You have a mind eater son. I need you to go live amongst the humans, act real sad, run around. We'll pretend to chase you. You are going to find the Raven's cars for us because they'll feel bad for you because you got a mind eater son that you're trying to protect from Big Bad Us. They'll take you in and then we will pounce on them. We will get our redemption. I'll be able to control my dragons and then the houses will need us again. And basically how he gets Devon to agree to this is he gets her out of the situation, which they smuggle Devon out. They make her steal like 26,000 pounds worth of.
It's like $10.
No,
I'm just kidding. Euros actually do better than the dollar now.
Yeah,
America has fallen,
pounds.
and
Anyway,
Western civilization is in decline.
A lot of money, as much as she can fit into a backpack, and then they take her to the Camelot, the home base of the knights.
Again, really strained fairy tale metaphor going on sometimes.
Basically, they implant baby Kai, 3-year-old Kai, with a device that is satellite, like
it's a tracker. It's a tracker that can also blow up.
But it's also a bomb,
yeah.
That they put in him, and if Ramsay presses a button, he will blow up. And it's basically to make sure that Devon does what they want him to, what they want her to, and then they send her out to go do this thing. Thus, we pick up at the beginning of the present plot line, which is Devon has been living in the human world for a year. There is some vaguely interesting, but not as much, development of Devon from being a book eater to someone who has to live amongst humanity. Like, there are brief moments where it talks about how she doesn't understand, like, despite eating all of these books, she doesn't understand basic things. There's a lot of like interactions with humans she doesn't know how to do, and she has to like figure some of that out. But anyway, they travel from town to town, and she has to feed her son people. Again, we talked about this before. It kind of brushes past this. Basically, the book picks up where she has finally had a contact of the list of people that Ramsay gave her who were suppliers for the Raven Scars, be like, hey, I might know them. Let's meet up for at this place. She goes to the bar, and this is after she's fed Kai, the vicar. She goes, and also there's Yarrow, the guy who was the nice guy at her last husband's place. He's asexual. He's very looked down upon because of this, and thus he's the only nice guy in the book. Well, the one of two nice guys in the book. And he gave her a Game Boy Advance or a Game Boy, I don't know, one of the two. And she gives it to Kai, and it is said that every time Kai feeds, he then just plays on the Game Boy for like a while, and that is a way to keep a common thread of who he is despite feeding on people. I wish more had been done with that. Like, if that's the case, I want him talking about things in terms of like, well, that's a real mushroom of a time. Like, imagine if he had a really like sophisticated vocabulary because of all of the people he ate, but
Mhm.
he also looked at his life and digested it through Mario because that's the only through line he has for his life.
That would have taken the author having to write him as a child, and the author is not good at doing that because, as aforementioned, hack. And again, the fact that her and her son don't have a real relationship is weird. And like at the end of the book, they're going to suddenly have one. And you're like, this wasn't an arc, though. This wasn't an arc of you having to learn to trust your child. It's just like suddenly we're different now.
And exactly, Angry Otter makes this point. I don't understand why anyone cares that he, Yaro's, asexual. The society doesn't seem very sexual to begin with. Yeah, only one guy gets to have sex regularly. Like, or at least babies. I guess the other people, there's human brothels, but that doesn't seem to be like a huge part of the
Only the
society.
patriarch's sexualness would actually have any importance in their family. So for the lesser men, it would have actually probably he would have been in a position of trust because they're like, oh, okay, he's not going to try to sex the wife in the same way that like a eunuch in ancient times would be allowed into the harem, like
Why?
that kind of a thing.
She goes to meet the Ravenscar contact, and the guy doesn't show up. But then a lady at the bar is like, "Oh, hey, what time is it? I had a date, but they didn't show." And basically, she starts flirting with this lady, and you've gotten at a couple points that Devon is not into men; she's into women. She actually tells this to Yara, where she's like, I'm into women. And he's like, you've been with a woman? And she's like, no, I just think I am. Like, which is fair. Like, you kind of know what you're attracted to, but it's really interesting because you think to yourself, is there going to be, once she leaves the houses and she can go, like, be by herself, is she going to explore her sexuality outside of reading lesbian books? No. No, she is not. Anyway, so this, what she thinks is a human lady, like, I'm sorry, you should be able to spot a book eater immediately. You should not confuse a book eater person
For a human.
for a human. But anyway, they're talking and flirting, and this lady is obviously into Devon. Like, maybe let's go back to your place. And Devon's like, I will feed you to my son. So she takes this lady, the lady's name is Hester, back to her place to feed to Kai. And she's like, because Kai, she fed him the vicar, but he's hungry again. Like, he's not full, and they have to leave and go somewhere else. And so she has to feed him again. So she's like, oh, I'm just gonna go in the bathroom because Kai is just on the couch, and she hears like scuffling and then all of a sudden she hears nothing, and then she hears Kai talking to someone, and it's that lady's voice, and she's like, what the fuck? Because again, she's hiding in the bathroom. He didn't eat her, and she comes out, and he's just sitting on the couch eating a book, like shredding up bits of it and eating it because he doesn't have book teeth, so he can't just go hump hump. And it turns out Hester is a Ravenscar. She's the sister of the new head of the Ravenscar. She was sent because they heard about Devon and her issue, and they would like to help her. But to help her, she has to go to their current place and agree to live by her brother's. What's her brother's name, guys?
Killick.
Then I was calling her first husband Killick, but his name wasn't Killick. Yeah, anyway, sorry, the guy I called Killick earlier was not Killick. This guy's Killick. They have to obey her brother Killick. And she's like, you guys literally did a coup to create a different world, and now it sounds exactly like the other houses where you have a patriarch. Yeah, I don't like this. I don't want to agree. But then Kai's like, I don't want to eat humans anymore, Mom. Just fucking agree to it. I need my fucking redemption. And she's like, fair enough. And then before they leave to go to the new Ravenscar house, she goes to the bathroom and she like she calls someone. They pick up. Nobody says anything, and she beep beep beeps Morse code into the phone, which basically tells the other person, change of plans. I'll update you in a thing. And she says, like in the narration, she's like, I need to call someone else, but it's fine. I'll touch base with them later. And so they're going to the train station, and Hester's like, I hope we don't run into any knights and dragons. That would suck. They run into knights and dragons, one of which is Ramsey. Chase ensues. They get cornered in the train station by 4 knights, and Hester pulls out a gun and just headshots all 4 of them. Dead. They turn to paper. They keep running.
They get on a train, and then onto the train, we get their first viewpoint. Other than Devon, we get Jaro, and Jaro jumps on the train after them.
Ramsey. His name's Ramsey.
Ramsey does these things. And then he like has a secret meeting with Devon where he's like, how's our plan going? Remember, I can blow up your child. And this is where it's first explored in the first explained in the book, because again, you got to remember these are two separate plot lines,
Yeah,
that this
so
is happening.
you get told that there's a bomb in her son before it gets explained in the past plot line. So again, unnecessary information from the past plot line. So
And she's like, okay, I'll do it. I'll go to Raven's car. And again, their whole plan is they gotta track him down. So
yeah.
her and the Hester flirt a little, and eventually they get there. Some stuff happens in between, but nothing important. A lot of this book is like dumb thriller, where it's just not very interesting.
Yeah, they stay at an inn, like a B&B. Anyway, they get there and they meet Killick. Also, Manny, the reporter that she turned over to her family accidentally all those years ago, is there, and he's like, "Hello, Devin." Well, they recognize each other, and he's like, "Good to see you," and she's like, "I'm so sorry I did that." And they meet Killick, and Killick is like, "Welcome." And the other thing they realize is all of the Ravenscar people in this manor are mind eaters, and then they look at Hester. And they're like, "Oh my God, Hester's a mind eater, but she had her tongue cut down. So she's a mind eater, but she can no longer eat minds. She fully survives off of redemption." And basically, what you learn is that back in the day, when Hester and her brother Killick were growing up, there's a huge amount of the Ravenscar children that ended up as mind eaters. And that's why they had to create redemption, because they didn't want all of their children to just get turned over into dragons. So they made the redemption to protect their family, but also to help control and make themselves necessary to the other families. But the Mind Eater children were still not treated well. So Hester and Killick kind of created this plan where they were going to liberate all Mind Eaters. They were going to give all Mind Eaters redemption for free so they could just be people. And the plan was, once they did this, and they did this coup, they would cut their tongues so they could not, because the big fear people have is that even with redemption, you still have the craving. It's like if you want to eat donuts all the time, but you eat apples. Just because you're eating apples doesn't mean you stop wanting to eat the donut. You're full. You don't need to eat the donut anymore, but you want to eat the donut. The donut
You,
still looks yummy.
I have never understood something you said so deeply as that.
You're welcome.
You still want
You're
the
welcome.
donut.
You still
It's
want
such
it. You're not
it's
hungry anymore.
no.
And that's why just eat the donut, because what'll happen is you'll eat the apple and then you're going to eat the donut anyway. You would have saved yourself calories if you just let yourself eat the donut. Anyway, continuing.
Basically, and the thing with Killick is he is now a crazy religious.
Yeah, he ate his father. His father was a dick. So now he is Killick, but also a dick. So now he's like, eating people is communing with them, and thus it is a religion. We are saints, communion, and everybody goes to a church to watch him eat someone. It's real weird. It's a cult now.
Yeah, and you know, the author tries to be like, oh, you know what happened is that he just adopted the system of patriarchy because he ate his dad systems, and you're like, no, too late, too late. You can't start trying to do this shit now. We have like a lot of the audiobook to go because we still actually have a bunch of the past. Again, you can tell by how we're describing how the past took up way more time than the present, in that it's just weirdly weighted that way in the book. And so basically, what ends up happening is she's still in contact with Jarrow. Jarrow shows up under a dock and is like, "I don't want to have to take care of your son, but I guess we will."
No, this was in the past. We forgot to
Yeah.
explain this. Previously, when she was first on the run, like fake on the run, she contacts Yarrow, and he's like, "I'll help you escape, but screw your son. We don't need to take him." And she's like, "But I love my son." And then his sister's like, "How dare you? Of course she has to take his son, because they're both mothers and they understand that you can't abandon your children."
Right.
But him, as a parentless asexual, cannot understand the love for a child. Really weird. Why would you say that? I don't like that. I imagine, because I'm not, so I can't speak, but I'm assuming asexual people have empathy for other people's emotions, and that he loves his sister as much as he does, that he has never been able to abandon her, so he would make the assumption that the same thing is true for Devin.
Or even that the fact that we see Devin not really interact with any other women but her uncles and brother, that actually he probably would have interacted with children at the manor, and so he would actually understand raising a child as much, if not more, than Devin.
Because he interacted with those children.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so he basically says,
very quickly, Lindbergh has an important point talking about Killick, that now he's called Kildick. Excellent pun, I like it.
And basically he says, listen, there is a way the satellite signal that is being fed into the explosive device in your son, we can just make a signal blocker and then nobody will be able to blow up your son. It's going to take me a minute to do it. And she's like, perfect. You go do that. When I'm ready to run, we shall come together and we shall make an escape plan. Back to the present. She contacts him and she's like, now's the time. I'm at the Raven Scars. I'm going to get a butt full of drugs. We need to get out. Do you have the signal blocker? And he's like, we are good to go. So then they meet up, and she's like, Hester, even though they've known each other 2 days, she's like, Hester, don't stay here. These people are crazy. Come with me. Also, your entire family is about to be attacked. The knights are coming. They're going to fuck up your family, steal all of your redemption. Just kidding. I have it. Because she takes all of the completed redemption. All of the completed redemption she just takes.
Yeah, I'm gonna risk this whole escape plan with my son for some hot chick I met 3 days ago.
Yep.
It's one of these things where the author really likes the romance, and it actually doesn't. Like the author is pushing it more than it organically should be there.
100%. And so she tells the whole thing, your family's going to get attacked. Come with us. We're taking the redemption. She also gets, because she talks to Manny. Manny, who has been living with the Raven Scars for years, does not like them because originally he was used as a lab rat, because originally redemption, they had to use a certain compound that was only found in the human brain, so they would have to like take it out of humans. And so he was kept in a cage and just like had blood drawn all the time. And then once they could make it artificially and redemption didn't need humans, he was just like, they used him as like a lackey. Like, you can write this, you can do banking, you have identification, you be our person and get stuff for us. And so he has no love for, especially now that Killick is crazy and like eating people, because he was down for the Mind Eater cause until Killick went all cult about it. And so she was like, I'll get you out. I'll take you to Ireland and I will protect you on the way if you give us the redemption. And he's like, deal, done. So they meet up with Manny. He's got the stuff. Hester's like, oh no, I'm so conflicted, but I'm going to come with you. And then Ramsay and all the knights come early. So then there's like chase scene as they're trying to like escape. There's a maze scene. They get through. There's like a fight. Eventually, to save his mother, Kai has to eat his uncle. And it's painted as, because Kai previously had been like, I never want to eat another person ever, ever, ever. No, thank you. I just want my redemption, please. But he's like,
it's so dumb that it's called that.
Yeah.
Because it makes everything we say sound so heavy-handed.
I know it does. And in the end, when like Ramsay's gonna kill Devon, he's like, the only weapon I have is my tongue. I shall choose it. So he eats Devon, and it's interesting because he talks as if he is the other people that he's eaten, because in those moments he is. But you get like, there's this one point where she's like, I'll miss Ramsay, and he goes, he knows, and he's happy that you'll miss him. And I'm like, why would he give a shit? Like, he didn't. I don't understand.
Yeah, he really did not like you, actually.
Like, young him would miss you, but like, who knows? But anyway, so he eats his uncle. They find Yarrow and Vic and Manny and Hester. You thought Hester died, but no, she's fine. The Prada, or like whatever Louis Vuitton leather
that was so
purse
stupid.
that she bought her protected her from a crossbow bolt. And they escape. And as they're leaving, he's like, what about my sister Salem? And she's like, one day we will come back and we'll rescue Salem, but today is not that day. So the sequel, Salem Rescue Part 2, like, that's a book. That's the book. We did it.
We got
1201.
We got it. Again, I may have to go through and rearrange how we do these. I really should have done that for She is the Sun, but I mean, most people actually don't finish videos, like statistically speaking, so it makes sense to front load all of it. Yeah. A frustrating, like, especially in the second half, I can't explain how little tension is going on because you keep having to cut back to the past where you know what happened. Like, you can figure out where Devon starts the story and where she starts the present from the past. Like, again, it works for 3 or 4 chapters for world building and to set up who she was as a child. But then it's like, yeah, we know she turned against the patriarchy. This is not an interesting exploration of how this is done. And it's just, we know how this ends. And so a lot of time is spent dilly-dallying about something that we already know is going to happen and we don't really care about.
It's really weird. The whole book is, again, this could have been a really cool exploration of motherhood. This could have been a really cool exploration of what it means to be a person who is entirely, like, Are they entirely made up of the books they read? Is there a fundamental personality to them that is that dictates the kinds of books that taste good to them? Like, what if fairy tales just always tasted bad to Devon and she didn't like them as a child, and that is what spurred her to eat different types of books that tasted better for her? Because it's fun as you just get fed books, and everybody, like, certain kinds of books taste a certain way, but everybody experiences them that way. There is so much, and again, from what we just told you of the plot, how much of that is dependent on book eating?
None.
Nothing. Nothing. The Mind Eaters, and that's why I said just changing it to Mind Eaters, or like you could have just made this a weird cult book, like in.
And her son is the chosen one. Like, literally, that's it. Nothing about this book depends on, and it's such a waste of potential for this book, and I hate it. And it was really hard to get through the last half. But I did, and I'm glad our patrons were there to hate it with me, because you guys hated this book. It's so funny.
Except for Ice Willow. She enjoyed it.
But she did point out all the problems
valid.
with it. Yeah. Again, I come back to two ideas. One, how do we find good books? Because recommendations can't do it, and rating systems can't do it. And so it's like I don't know how to pick good book. It's like, because it's sort of a little depressing to just constantly read and not good books for this channel, and the only good books we have to be books we've already read. Like, there is something a little bit like challenging about that, as much as you guys love when we roast books. And the other thing I come back to is, why isn't this author in jail? Why is she still at liberty to cause harm? She's gonna probably write a sequel, if not more works. Like, why? How do we stop this?
I don't necessarily think they need to go to jail, but I do wish there was. I
House
wish there was
arrest?
a way. I wish there was a way that, like, you could have your taste in books analyzed and just be given books that, like, like how there's those things where, like, you can do, like, depending on how your taste buds work, certain wines are just going to taste good to you, and that doesn't mean like the wines that are not within your taste buds range are bad. It just means like they're not for you.
Or even algorithms like on YouTube, for example, like those algorithms tend to be pretty good about getting you videos you want to watch. Like, why don't books have that? And why haven't we designed that technology yet? That's what AI really needs to be doing. Forget this whole drawing, chatting thing. It needs to be focusing on getting us better books. And, like, again, there's basic problems here in that the tension in the structure of it is lacking. Somebody should have just told her, don't do this. The character not having an arc, that's a very basic writing
in the
thing.
in the present tense, because she has an arc in the past one, because again, she goes from very sheltered to very passionate, very wild, and then she learns about her, like, I'm a lesbian. You can be a lesbian in the modern human society. Like, that's a thing that's okay. In fact, you can marry them. But in the present tense, that's all happened. Like, when the present story, like, and there's no arc for her in that plot line at all, except she decides to tell her son things and not hide it from him, because while he is 5 years old, he is also 25 adults.
Yeah, we forgot to mention how just perfunctory that plump. And again, I'll even argue in the past, it is not as much of an arc as it could be, but it is at least sort of there. Yeah, this is just such a mediocre book, and it's mediocre in ways that should have been caught in the early on in the editing. They're amateur mistakes, and I don't understand why they're allowed.
But yeah, books are subjective. Some people really enjoy things. We did not enjoy this book. If you enjoyed it, that is fine. Valid response. I think this book could have been better than it is, and I think anyone who enjoyed it, if the changes we had been implemented, would have also enjoyed that version as well.
Yeah, we're not describing a radically different book in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
In other ways we are, but a radically better book. Yeah, all right, thanks everybody.
Bye.